This was a time when a $30,000 brick ranch in Sugarhouse felt like a forever home. Gas cost 50 cents, and your whole week revolved around Sunday church, unless you were one of those making a run to Evanston for real liquor or heading out to the Terrace for a night with just a $1 club card. The official story says Salt Lake City in the 1970s was all wholesome families, shoveling snow under the Wasatch and cheering for the Utah Stars. But behind those burnt orange shag carpets and neatly trimmed lawns, strict ward boundaries, 3.2% beer, and unspoken rules shaped everything, from who felt they belonged to who quietly didn't. What was life really like here before the outside world came crashing in? Wide, tree-lined streets wrapped around tidy blocks in neighborhoods like Sugarhouse, the Avenues, and Rose Park, where the mountains seemed to watch over every backyard. This was a time when a brick ranch or a split level, maybe $25,000 or $45,000 if it had a finished basement, felt like a lifelong investment. Most houses wore the same uniform, with burnt orange shag carpet underfoot, wood paneling along the walls, and kitchens with avocado green appliances that hummed through dinner. Curtains were thick, wallpaper was bold, and every family room had a shelf for church manuals and a spot for the TV, usually tuned to KSL. Out front, lawns were carefully mowed, and mature maples dropped leaves big enough to hide a whole afternoon's worth of raked piles. Kids rode Schwinn bikes in lazy circles, neighbors waved from porch swings, and the air always carried a hint of fresh-cut grass or snowmelt. Evenings brought porch lights flickering on in a quiet rhythm. Each home was a small, steady beacon in a city that still felt like a big neighborhood. Every week moved to a steady, familiar rhythm. Sunday mornings meant 3 hours at church, sacrament meeting, Sunday school, and Relief Society all bundled together in one long block. The city itself seemed to pause. Stores stayed dark, streets emptied, and even the grocery aisles were quiet. On Monday nights, most houses closed their doors for family home evening. Parents pulled out lesson manuals, kids gathered for scripture stories and board games, and the television stayed off. Church leaders encouraged this routine, and in neighborhoods like Sugarhouse or Rose Park, it felt like everyone was on the same schedule. The ward was not just a place to worship, it was the hub for potlucks, Cub Scout meetings, and softball games. If a family hit hard times, the bishop's storehouse stepped in with canned peaches or flour, all managed by neighbors volunteering their time. For those outside the church, these patterns shaped daily life too. A non-Mormon family might plan their errands around Sunday closures or find their social calendar a little emptier on Mondays, quietly aware of the invisible lines drawn by faith and tradition. This was a time when the city's pulse beat strongest through church halls and living rooms, weaving together a sense of belonging and, sometimes, gentle exclusion that touched everyone, whether they noticed it or not. After sunset, Salt Lake City's rules didn't loosen. They just got more creative. Utah law capped beer at 3.2% alcohol, so a cold one barely took the edge off. Hard liquor was another story. You couldn't just walk into a bar and order a drink. Instead, you paid $1 for a little plastic card, your ticket into a private club. The trick was, every club was technically a membership lounge, even if all you really wanted was a gin and tonic. The Rainbow, the Terrace Ballroom, the New Yorker, each had its own crowd, but the ritual was the same. Flash that card, sign the book, and hope the band was worth the cover. This was a time when getting a real drink meant knowing the right door, the right handshake, or at least the right highway exit. Salt Lake City's nightlife was a puzzle, strict on paper, but full of workarounds for anyone willing to bend the rules, if only a little. Canyon mornings started with the scrape of ice off a windshield and a trunk jammed full of mismatched skis. It didn't matter if your car was a battered Pinto, a Vega, or something held together with duct tape. If it could make it up Little Cottonwood, you were in business. Alta, Brighton, Snowbird, and Park City weren't playgrounds for the wealthy yet. A day lift ticket ran $8, maybe $12. If you wanted to go all in, a season pass hovered around $100. For a lot of locals, that was a month's rent or a couple of weeks' pay, but it was doable. Jeans over long johns, wool hats pulled low, and gloves that never quite dried out. Nobody cared about fashion or fancy gear. The parking lots were a jumble of beater cars, some with chains, most without, all steamed up from wet boots and the smell of yesterday's sandwiches. The lift lines were full of college kids, ski bums, and families, everyone chasing powder and that wide-open feeling you couldn't find anywhere in the valley. By afternoon, the canyon air buzzed with stories: who found the best run, who hiked for a little extra, who was skipping work to squeeze in a few more turns. This was a time when the mountains offered a kind of freedom you couldn't buy anywhere else, and in Salt Lake, that freedom was just a canyon drive away. A single paycheck could stretch surprisingly far in Salt Lake City during the 70s. Most families counted on one income, often from a teacher, a state worker, or someone clocking in at places like Kennecott, Theocal, or the Hercules powder plant, bringing home anywhere from $8,000 to $15,000 a year. That was enough to cover the mortgage on a brick house, keep a Ford Pinto or Chevy Vega in the driveway, and still leave room for a few small luxuries. Gas hovered around 50 cents a gallon, so you could fill up the tank and not think twice about a weekend drive up the canyon. Groceries for a family of 4 ran about $40 a week. Bread, milk, hamburger, and maybe a splurge on steak for a birthday. A new car cost $2,500, give or take, and the sticker shock we know today just did not exist. Paychecks landed like clockwork, and while nobody felt rich, most folks felt secure. This was a time when a careful budget could cover the basics and still leave enough for a night at Lagoon, a ZCMI shopping trip, or even a season pass at Snowbird if you saved up. Downtown still buzzed with life on Saturdays when families piled into station wagons and circled the ZCM1 parking lot, hoping for a spot close to the doors. Inside, the store's candy counter called to kids while parents browsed racks of corduroy pants and Sunday dresses. Across Main Street, window displays at Auerbach's and Paris Company tried to keep up, but everyone knew ZCMI was the real heart of Salt Lake shopping. On game nights, the Salt Palace lit up with the roar of Utah Stars fans waving blue and gold pennants, and for one wild spring in 1971, the whole city celebrated an ABA championship. Zelmo Beaty's name was on every sports page, and even folks who didn't care much for basketball found themselves swept up in the pride. Warm summer evenings drew crowds to the drive-ins, like Midvale and Bountiful Six, where the smell of popcorn drifted through rolled-down windows and double features ran late. Local TV and radio stitched the city together. KSL's News at 10, KCPX, Spinning Eagles, and Elton John. And every Sunday, the Tabernacle Choir's hymns echoing from Temple Square. Lagoon's roller coasters and the State Fair's Midway promised cotton candy and dizzy rides, while Liberty Park filled with families, teenagers, and old men playing chess under the sycamores. These were the city's shared stages, places where everyone, for a moment, belonged to the same Salt Lake story. In 1979, Salt Lake City found itself at the center of a national storm. Sonia Johnson, a local mother of 4 and a lifelong member of the church, stood in front of a church court and refused to back down from her support for the Equal Rights Amendment. Newspapers filled with headlines and letters, some praising her courage, others calling her a traitor to her faith. In living rooms and church foyers, the debate was not just about politics. It was about who belonged and who did not. For many women, the Equal Rights Amendment meant hope for something new. For church leaders and their supporters, it was a threat to the order they had always known. When Sonia Johnson was excommunicated that November, the decision echoed through every ward and neighborhood, dividing friends, families, and even Sunday dinner tables. This was a time when the city's sense of unity felt suddenly fragile, and the question of what it meant to be a good Utahn or a good Mormon no longer had a simple answer. By the middle of the decade, a sense of unease had crept into the city's quiet routines. In 1974 and 1975, headlines about missing women and unsolved murders sent a chill through neighborhoods that once felt immune to big city dangers. Ted Bundy's name was whispered in grocery store lines and at church potlucks, each new report making parents hold their kids a little closer and lock their doors a little earlier. Even the air seemed to press in. Each winter, a thick gray haze settled over the valley, trapping car exhaust and factory smoke beneath the mountains. Inversion warnings flashed on the news, and teachers kept kids inside for recess when particulate counts spiked. Some days, the Wasatch disappeared behind a wall of smog, and the taste of metal lingered on your tongue. People started to wonder if the city's old sense of safety was slipping away. If the world outside was finally catching up to Salt Lake's wide streets and porch-lit evenings. For every family who still trusted their neighbors, there was a growing worry that something precious was being lost, one headline or hazy morning at a time. Today, $30,000 won't buy you a closet in Sugarhouse, and the city's old boundaries blur as new faces and ideas arrive. What endures is that deep longing for connection, a sense that, for better or worse, Salt Lake's real legacy is the community we choose to build next. Share your own memories below.